Shabbat Shalom. This is the third week in the Hebrew month of Sivan, and we are thrilled that you are all here to join us for this wonderful Shabbat occasion. We have many reasons to be here. Each of us comes into the sanctuary with a different need. Some of us come to gather with friends and see family. Others come to fulfill a service obligation. Someone tomorrow is going to become a bar mitzvah. Others are receiving their prayer book this evening. Whatever our reason for being here in the sanctuary tonight, let's take a moment to breathe in the peace and the joy and the wonder of Shabbat and to celebrate this holy and spiritual time. We begin our service this evening with the singing of Lecha Dodi, which can be found in our Seder Ream in our prayer book on page 20. And when we get to the final stanza of Lecha Dodi, we're going to rise as one community, turn and face the rear of the sanctuary as if we are ceremonially welcoming the Sabbath bride into our midst. We begin Lecha Dodi on page 20. It is my pleasure to invite to the bima at this time to sanctify our Shabbat candles, Rita Sherman.
Can I put this down? You sure can. I want to do the English. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu l'hadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Amen.
Amen. Oh, I lost the page. Wait, give me. Okay, you'll have to say it in English.
Okay, no problem. Rita, that was terrific. Will you come back next week and do it again?
I thought in the reform you sing to a different tune.
This was perfect. I'll take it.
This is the old timer.
There you go. Yasher Koach. All right, we continue with Shalom Aleichem, which can be found in our Sidurim on page 24.
We continue now with the Baruch Hu on page 28. Please rise. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach, Baruch Adonai HaMevorach, Le'olam Va'ed. Please be seated. It's my pleasure on the eve of his bar mitzvah to invite up Charlie Sherman to lead us in Ma'ariv Aravim on page 30.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim b'chochma poteach she'arim uvivuna mishane itim umachalif et hazmanim umsader et hakochavim b'mishmerotehem barakir kirtsono Borei yom v'layla, golel or mipnei choshe, v'choshe mipnei or, uma'avir yom umevi layla, umavdil ben yom uvein layla. Adonai tsevaot shmo, el chai v'kayam, tamid yimloch aleinu le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai, hamariv aravim. Everlasting love, you offered your people Israel by teaching us Torah and mitzvot, laws and precepts. Therefore, Adonai our God, when we lie down and when we rise up, we will meditate on your laws and your commandments. We will rejoice in your Torah forever. Day and night we will reflect on them, for they are a life, and doing them lengthens our days. Never remove your love from us. Praise to you, Adonai, who loves your people Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael.
We continue now with the Shema on page 34. Please rise. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem, Kevod Malchuto, Leolam Vaed. Please be seated, and we will continue together on page 36, chanting the Ve'ahavta. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol meodecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'elem asher anochi metzavecha hayom al levavecha Veshinantam levanecha, v'dibartam bam, b'shivtecha b'veitecha, uvlechtecha v'derech, uvshochbecha uvkumecha, ukshartam le'od al yadecha, v'hayu letotafot bein einecha, uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'hitem kedoshim lelohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim Lihiot lachem lelohim, ani Adonai Elohechem. At the bottom of page 39, let's read responsively. In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth. The high heavens declare your glory. May earth reveal your justice and love. From bondage in Egypt we were delivered. At Sinai we bound ourselves to your way. Inspired by prophets and instructed by sages, time and again we overcame oppressive forces. Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed. Let us continue to work for the day when the nations will be one and at peace. Then shall we rejoice as Israel did, singing on the shores of the sea. We continue on page 40 with Mi Chamocha. continue now on page 41. Sing the song of men and women joined in understanding and respect, a song of God's miracles, an earth protected and cherished, a gift for our children and the generations to come, the song of a land once ravished by war, now quiet and content, her soldiers home to leave no more, the song of a world redeemed, the song of peace. We continue now with the song Let There Be Love at the top of page 43. In the middle of page 44, the people of Israel shall keep Shabbat, observing Shabbat throughout the ages as a covenant for all time. It is a sign for all time between me and the people of Israel. For in 6 days Adonai made heaven and earth, and on the seventh day God ceased from work and was refreshed. We'll now sing Vishamru, these words in Hebrew.
We continue in our Siddur with our congregational tefillah, which can be found beginning on page 46. Will the congregation please rise? Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi agi tehilatecha. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi agi tehilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu. Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanorah, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei Ha'akol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot V'imahot, Umevi Geula Livnei V'nehem, Lema'an Shemo B'Ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magen, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham Ve'ezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor Leolam Adonai, Mechaye Metim Atah Rav Lehoshia, Morid Hatal, Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed, Mechaye Metim Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Verofei Cholim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayim Emunato, Lishenei Afar, Michamocha Baal Gevurot, Umido Melach, Melech Memit Umechaye, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman atah l'hachayot metim. Baruch atah Adonai, mechaye hametim. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, ukdoshim b'chol yom yahalelucha selah. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh. Please be seated. We continue at the top of page 55. Let's read responsively. May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who suffer find solace. May all who despair find purpose. And may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai, Mikadesh HaShabbat. We continue on the top of page 58. Modim anachnu lach, she'atahu Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, leolam va'ed. Tzur chayinu magen yishenu atahu ledor v'ador, nodeh lecha unsaper tehilatecha, al chayinu misarim biadecha, v'al mishmotenu hapkudat lach, v'al nislecha shebechol yom imanu, v'al niflotecha v'tovotecha shebechol eit, erev avoker v'tzohoraim. Ha tov, ki lo chalu rachamecha, v'hamerachem, ki lo tamu chasadecha, ki me'olam, ki me'olam, ki vinu lach, ki me'olam, ki me'olam, ki vinu lach. For all these things, O sovereign, let your name be forever praised and blessed. O God, Redeemer and Helper, let all who live affirm you and praise your name in truth. Blessed are you, Adonai, your name is goodness, and you are worthy of thanksgiving. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha, ulecha na'eh lehodot. We continue on page 60 with the singing of Shalom Rav, followed by silent meditation.
Now turn to Seder Kriyat HaTorah, our Torah service, which begins on page 244. Please rise. In this scroll is the secret of our people's life from Sinai until now. Its teaching is love and justice, goodness and hope. Freedom is its gift to all who treasure it. Gadlu Adonai iti, unaromama shemo yachdav. Exalt Adonai with me, let us extol God's name together. This week, we are in one of my favorite Torah portions, Parshat Shelach Lecha. In this parsha, Moses sends 12 spies into the land of Israel to report on the inhabitants and the country. When they come back, 10 of them proclaim that the land is indeed flowing with milk and honey and produces fruit. However, they claim that the inhabitants of the country were too powerful, that the cities were fortified and too large. They claim that the people who were living there were like Nephilim, a type of giants, whereas they, the Israelites, were like grasshoppers. And so there was no way to fight them off in order to move into the land. However, the other two spies, Caleb and Joshua, come to the rescue and deliver a more positive and uplifting report, sharing that it is absolutely possible for the Israelites to go into the land of Israel and that they will not be destroyed by these so-called Nephilim. If you would like to follow along with us tonight, you can do so in our Etz Chaim Humashim. Those are the maroon books, either underneath the seat in front of you or underneath your seat if you're in the front row. And we are on page 843. Ta'amod Shlomo Pinchas ben Abba v'Rivka la'aliyah haTorah. Hi, come on the other side. Yeah, you want to wave hi?
Hi, Dad.
Okay. You're right there is where we start.
Baruch Hu Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. אשר בחר בנו מכל עמים, ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני, נותן התורה.
Amen. Here we go. Vayachas Kalev et ha'am el Moshe, vayomer alo na'ale vayishenu, ata ki yachol nucha la. V'ha'anashim asher alu imo v'amru, lo nuchal le'olot el ha'am, ki chazak hu mimenu. V'yotziu dibat ha'aretz, asher taru ata el b'nei Yisrael lemor. Ha'aretz asher avarnu va, letor ata eretz ochelet yoshveha hi. V'chol ha'am asher re'enu betocha, anshe midot. V'sham re'enu et hanifilim, b'nei anak, min hanifilim, v'nahi ba'anenu kechagavim, v'chen hayenu b'einehem. V'tisa kol ha'edut, v'yitenu et kulam, v'yivchu ha'am balaylahu.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu torat emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yashikach. Thank you. And now, with the Torah in our midst, we take a moment to think about those who are in need of healing, our friends and members of this community. And this evening, we think of Kristen Nystro, Richard Vane, Arthur Lang, Heather Borzak, Dick McLean, Quincy Newman, Brooke Ann Godesman, Bridget Stern, Jim Barry, Jay Field, the Mix family, Len Schutzman, Alan Wolski, Joy Rosenthal, Sherry Katz, Mary Joel Wolski, Elisa Siegel, Gary Tatiner, Cheryl Hildebrand, Cheryl Ball, John Eulenberg, Rhonda Rhodes, David Menikoff, Rusty Taylor, Rabbi Bruce Goldwasser, Rabbi Fred Wenger, Jean Maynard, Jacqueline Sullivan, Julie Melvin, Carol Nymark, Catherine Smith, Maurice Saladki, Sarah Warch, and all who suffer whom we know not by name. Mishaberach avotenu Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, ve'imotenu Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, v'Leah, hu yivarech v'yiraped kol cholei Yisrael, v'yishlach lahem bimhera refuah shlema, refuat hanefesh u'refuat haguf, v'nomar. Amen. We continue now with our prayer for healing, Mishaberach, on page 253.
The B'nai Mitzvah process starts about a year in advance of a student's date, even though the students really don't start their formal training until about 6 or 7 months before that time. The families begin to wake up to the fact that this is really happening when their kids become eligible to start signing in for their services a year before that special date. Tonight, we have a special opportunity to publicly begin Benjamin Kaiser and Jake Turoff's to the Bima to officially begin the countdown to their B'nai Mitzvah. I also want to invite Charlie to come back to the bima because they're going to pass the prayer book. Come on. Charlie, you'll become a bar mitzvah tomorrow morning and will hopefully come back next year to read Torah the night before Jake's b'nai mitzvah. And hopefully we'll have a sixth grader to whom you can pass a prayer book to and share the same Torah portion, Shabbat, Shelach. Jake, you will stand here a year from now, the night before you become a b'nai mitzvah. Ben, in 51 weeks, you will become a bar mitzvah with the Torah portion, B'halot Techa. We want to give you these prayer books. To use over the next year and even beyond that, to become more familiar with the service preparation for your big day next year. Every service you attend now will count towards your required services.
Thus, we link tradition and Torah together, building and strengthening our Jewish community. So I'd like to invite anybody else who's had either the Torah portions of B'halot Lecha or Shelach Lecha to the bima at this time for a special blessing. Do we have anyone who's had these? We'll have more next year. Very good. I'll invite the congregation to please rise. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless you and keep you. Yair Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka. May God's light always shine upon you and be gracious unto you. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May God always be a presence in your life, and may it be that wherever you go in your life, you always know the presence of God and the greatest gift, the gift of shalom, the gift of peace. And together we say, Amen. Asher Koach, you guys can hold us sit down. And I'm going to ask everyone to remain standing as we are going to lift and dress the Torah. Ya'amod Eitan ben Ephraim Moshe Hagba. Ya'amod Ephraim Moshe ben Abba Galila. Please be seated. It's my pleasure now to invite up Lauren Hahn to lead us in our prayer for America on page 258, and Jake Turoff to lead us in our prayer for Israel on page 259.
O guardian of life and liberty, may our nation always merit your protection. Teach us to give thanks for what we have by sharing it with those who are in need. Help us to appreciate one another and to respect the many ways that we serve you. Bless our country, that it may always be a stronghold of peace and its advocate among the nations. May contentment reign with its borders, health, and happiness within its homes. Strengthen the bonds of friendship among the inhabitants of all lands, and may the love of your name hallow ever home in every heart. We praise you, O God, the source of peace. Amen.
Amen. O Heavenly One, protector and redeemer of Israel, bless the state of Israel, which marks the drawing of hope for all who seek peace. Shield it beneath your wings of your love. Spread over it the canopy of your peace. Send your light and truth to all who lead and advise. Guiding with your good counsel, establish peace in the land and fullness of joy for all who dwell there. Amen.
We rise now as we return the Torah to the Ark on page 256.
Rabbi Weiner told me this was one of her favorite Torah portions and that she wanted to read about the Nephilim. I said, Rabbi, who are these Nephilim? I mean, heard about them, read it. We never studied them in rabbinical school, you know? So she said to me, you know, Rabbi, this would be a really good opportunity for you to teach us about the Nephilim. I said, thanks a lot. So I had to go look up the Nephilim, but I'm really glad I did, Rabbi. Thank you for that. Because the Nephilim actually appear to us not only in this week's Torah portion, but it is also linked to Bereshit, to the portion where Genesis is a part. And the link is that the Nephilim, these beings, are first identified in Genesis 6 and never discussed again until this week's Torah portion, until Numbers 13, and then never again after in the biblical text. And we learn from Genesis that these Nephilim existed before the flood, and they possibly had something to do with the mingling of divine and humankind. And from Numbers 13, we learn that the Nephilim are related to the Anakites, who are described as giants. And even though we're taught that the works of creation, you remember the flood supposedly wiped everyone out, it appears as though it wiped everyone human out, but not the Nephilim. So this isn't only the only curious detail about these Nephilim. If you look at the root word of the Nephilim, it's nun pe lamed, and it's a fairly common root in the Hebrew Bible with the meaning of fall. So in Hebrew, modern Hebrew, to nafal, it means to fall, and it's in this particular plural form, however, it only occurs in the two instances that I mentioned earlier. Now, even though we know the meaning of the root to fall, it's a very challenging task for translators to translate what these Nephilim are. Some biblical translations either go in one or two ways. Some translate Nephilim as giants based on the description in this week's Torah portion, and other versions just leave it as Nephilim. They just leave the word transliterated. And then there are other translators that are less cautious, and they rely on the phrase, the fallen ones. I like to think, though, that when we get frightened, like the spies did, the 12 spies went out to scout the land, 10 spies scouted the land, and they fell. They fell when they got frightened, and their spirits fell, and they could not rise above it. And I think for us as humans, when we are ever in fear of doing something, we fall. The difference is between people who stay in fear and fall and don't rise to the challenge, and those who actually feel the fear and take the action that they have to take anyway. That is what characterizes us as human and as brave. It's not that we are without fear, it's that we take the action despite the fear, and we rise up and work through it. One of the main complaints that was given by the scouts, as Rabbi Weiner mentioned, was that these giants seemed to be inconquerable. But of the 12 that were faithful to Israel, only 2 stayed faithful. That was Caleb and Joshua, and they were the ones who rose above their fear. And they listened, instead of to their fear, to faith. There's another insight that was offered by a rabbi, Moshe Feinstein, who says in life, when we have a task or mission to accomplish, our responsibility is to get started on it. It's not necessarily whether or not we finish, although it's always better when we do finish, but we at least have to try. And sometimes when we just begin that first step, which is so frightening, the next step comes from that first step. So it's said in Ethics of Our Fathers in Pirkei Avot that we are not we are not responsible to finish the job, but we are not free to desist from it. So we have to start the task and put our best effort into it and leave the results up to God to decide whether or not we achieve our goal. The scouts, the 10 scouts, missed this point. They saw the giants and concluded that they couldn't conquer them. But all they had to do was begin to try. They didn't realize that the ultimate success of their mission was in God's hands. And in fact, he did eventually cause the Israelites to miraculously conquer the giants. It just took them another 38 years. But it reminds me of a story that I heard many years ago, that traditionally the last event before the closing ceremonies in the Olympics is the men's marathon, which ends in the Olympic Stadium. And the 1968 marathon had been over for 2 hours. Cameramen began to break down their equipment, and the sports writers were finishing their stories when somebody yelled out, "Look, look!" One last runner hobbled into the stadium. Painstakingly, he circled the Olympic oval, he crossed the finish line, he dropped to his knees, and he kissed the ground. The sports writers and the videographers crowded around him, and they said, "Who are you?" And he said, "My name is John Stephen Akwari." "Where are you from?" And he said, "I am from the country Tanzania." And they pressed on, "The race ended over 2 hours ago. Why are you still running?" And he replied, "My country sent me 5,000 miles to run in the Olympic marathon. They didn't send me to stop running the race. They sent me to finish the race." So may we always have the mindset to begin the work and trust that in some time we will finish the race, or someone will finish it for us. That if we act for the highest good and we don't fall to our fear, but we act with faith, that we will prevail. That our job is to do footwork and leave the results in God's hands. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for celebrating Shabbat with us tonight. My name is Michael Stoller, and I'm honored to share a few short announcements this evening. Thank you, Jason and the choir, for our wonderful music, and Officer Velasquez for providing security. Mazel tov to Ben and Jake on receiving your prayer books tonight. Welcome to the guests of the Sherman family, and Mazel tov on Charlie's B'nai Mitzvah. You can join us here on YouTube tomorrow to witness Charlie's being called to the Torah as a B'nai Mitzvah. Tomorrow night at 5:30 p.m., join us at Etz Chaim as we mark the end of Shabbat and celebrate Pride Month with prayer, song, and celebration. Our dinner in the Lot Summer Series starts June 28th, followed by Spirituality Shabbat. For all those details on each event, check out our weekly happenings emails. Please join us after the service for a wonderful Oneg at the Social Hall sponsored by the Sherman family. Shabbat Shalom.
And I want to welcome the Hahn family too. It's great to see you guys, so welcome. And thank you all for being here. It is my pleasure at this time, as we begin our concluding prayers, to invite to our bima to open our ark Dr. Sudashan Sharma and Neetu Sharma. And we continue on the bottom of page 282. Please rise for Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabech ladon hakol, latet gedula liotzer breshit, shelo asanu kegoye haratzot, v'lo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam, va'anachnu korim, Umishtachavim umodim lifnei melech malachei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu. At this time in our worship service, our thoughts turn to those who have departed this earth and whose yortzeit we commemorate this Shabbat. We recall with love Matilda Berger, grandmother of Dubravka Jaraga, Lee Bernstein, brother of Jamie Bernstein Coffey, Meyer Kaznowski, brother of Nathan Kaznowski, my Uncle Monty, Morris Frankel, father of Sidney Frankel, grandfather of Daniel Frankel, Lillian Klein, aunt of Linda Mayer, Marion Levy, mother-in-law of Alan Feinstein, Harry Marks, grandfather of Robin Dombeck, Jeannie Berg, grandmother of Laura Talbot, Alice Dudman, sister of Kathleen Shapiro, Elaine Merkovitz, mother of Rachel Wood, Florence Kirschbaum, mother of Gerald Kirschbaum, Abdul Razak, father of Bibi Lipson, Edith Unger, mother of Carol Wolfson, Ruth Basin, mother of Linda Siegel, Ferdinand Fishman, father of Sherry Kaiser, Ralph Merkovitz, father of Rachel Wood, Helen Pearson, grandmother of Sarah Eno, Edna Schmidt, mother of Ellen Gossage, Seymour Greenstone, father of Diane Kleiber, Leah Lerner, mother of Marla Huddleston, Gertrude Levy, grandmother of Sarah Plotnick Anderson, Bob Root, grandfather of Heather Levine, Chana Rosen, aunt of Dina Fruin, Joel Lax, father of Robert Lax, Robert M. Bell, father of Eileen Landau. Rose Dorsey, mother of Gary Dorsey. Edith Katz, grandmother of Evan Katz. Clarence Maroon, grandfather of Joseph Levine. Rudolph Rich, Hans Gutenstein, Ida Carlin, and we mourn the recent passing of Ashley Rose and Gloria Kahn, and Myra Jetty, cousin of Michelle Miller. Our griefs and sympathies are mingled as together we recite Kaddish Yatom, the Mourner's Kaddish, which can be found in our prayer book on page 294. Will the congregation please rise? Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, Bi'alma divrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, B'chayei chon uvyomei chon ufchayei dechol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agalal uvizman kari v'imru Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach leolam ulmei almaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, V'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shemei dekudesha barichu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tush bechata v'nechemata, da'amiran bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom bimromav, hu ya'asei shalom, Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved, and let us say, Amen. Please be seated. Our closing song this evening is Esa Einai, and after which I'm going to invite the Sherman and Han family to join me on the bima as we make Kiddush and Motzi, the blessings, before our Kiddush, so we can go right into our sanctuary, we're in the sanctuary. We can go right into the social hall, and we can just go ahead and start eating. And so this way, all the people who are streaming can enjoy Kiddush and Motzi with us. We continue with Esa Einai, which can be found on page 339. On this holy Shabbat, may we draw near to life, to peace, and to joy. May we not be encumbered by fear, but act on faith. May we find true rest, holiness in our deeds, and worth in the study of Torah. On this holy Shabbat, may we draw nearer to one another and to God, and let us say together, Amen. And Shabbat Shalom. Han and Sherman families, come on to the bima. Charlie's going to hold the Kiddush cup, and we're going to sing together. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddeshanu b'mitzvotav, v'ratzav banu. V'shabbat kodsho, b'ahavahu ratzon hinchilanu, zikaron lemahaseh v'reishit, Kuhu Yom Tehila Lemikra Kodesh Zecher Letziat Mitzrayim Kivanu Vacharta Viotanu Kidashta Mikol Hamim B'Shabbat Kodshecha B'Yahava Uvratzon Hinchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat. Amen. L'chaim. Let's sing together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz b'te'avon. B'te'avon, everyone. Shabbat shalom. Let's go have a nice cookie.
All right. I don't know where this goes. You can
I'll
take
take
it.
it. Yes, you got it.